Why Erik Morales truly hated Manny Pacquiao. They call it the greatest trilogy in boxing history. 3 fights, 2 legends. And for almost 20 years, the story has been told the same way. 2 warriors who pushed each other to greatness and walked away as brothers. But there's a version of this story most fans never hear. One built from Erik Morales' own words, years after the gloves came off. Words that sound less like respect and more like a wound that never closed. Did Erik Morales actually hate Manny Pacquiao? He never said that exact word. But by the end of this video, you'll understand why so many people who watched it unfold believe he came close. This is the real story behind the trilogy. And it doesn't end where you think. March 19, 2005, MGM Grand, Las Vegas. Manny Pacquiao walked in as the betting favorite, the rising southpaw threat with frightening hand speed. Erik Morales was the established king, a 4-division champion who had already survived wars with Marco Antonio Barrera that scarred both men for life. Morales controlled the pace all night, opened a cut over Pacquiao's eye in round 5, and took home a clean unanimous decision. Pacquiao's first loss in 6 years. By every traditional sports narrative, this is where the story should end in mutual respect. 2 gladiators, a fair fight, a handshake. But that's not what Pacquiao believed happened. Here's what most casual fans don't know. Pacquiao didn't leave that ring accepting the loss as legitimate. He'd suffered a serious cut from an accidental clash of heads, openly protested the red gloves he'd been given, claiming they hurt his vision, and later pointed to unresolved promoter disputes and tax issues that had thrown off his entire camp. In Pacquiao's mind, the loss wasn't proof Morales was better. It was proof the circumstances had been stacked against him. That's a dangerous thing for a proud fighter to believe, because it doesn't produce peace, it produces a mission. But here's the part that flips the story entirely. Morales noticed something changing too, something that had nothing to do with skill and everything to do with leverage. Going into the rematch, the terms shifted. By Morales' own account, years later, Pacquiao's camp wouldn't allow him any flexibility on weight. Every pound over the limit would cost him $50,000. To Morales, this wasn't strategy. It felt like a setup, a way to drain him before the bell even rang. January 21, 2006, Pacquiao dominated, stopping Morales in the 10th round, the first time in Morales' entire career he had ever been knocked out. Think about what that means for a man who had survived Barrera at his most brutal. Never stopped, never finished. And the man who finally did it was the same fighter Morales believed had needed an unfair advantage just to get him in the ring. But Morales didn't get a chance to fix it quietly. He got one more shot. And it went worse. November 18, 2006, the grand finale. 18,000 fans, Filipino chants colliding with Mexican pride, one of the most electric atmospheres of the era. It lasted less than 3 rounds. 3 knockdowns, stopped at 2:57 of round 3. Here's the detail the highlight reels leave out. Years later, in a remarkably candid conversation with his old rival-turned-friend, Marco Antonio Barrera, Morales admitted that early in that fight, getting hit, he thought to himself, "This is going to be hard." And after the knockdowns, he looked over and saw his father in the corner, visibly breaking down. And in that moment, he said, his whole past came rushing back to him. That's not just a man losing a boxing match. That's a man whose identity cracked in real time, in front of his own father, against the one opponent he believed shouldn't have been able to do it. We can't know for certain what Morales felt in that exact instant, but we know what he said about it more than a decade later. And that's where this story stops being speculation. Because the words that came after weren't about boxing anymore. They were about something he'd been carrying for years. Long after retirement, Morales sat down for an interview that revealed more than any fight footage ever could. He brought up Juan Manuel Marquez, the only other man who'd given Pacquiao real trouble, and pointed out how much credit Marquez gets for eventually knocking Pacquiao out. Then he asked the question that had clearly been sitting with him for years. How could Pacquiao fight Marquez at weight after weight? 126, 135, even up to 147. Yet never give Morales a rematch at even half a pound over their original limit? Then Morales said the line that mattered most, asking directly whether refusing to budge for him while bending over backward for Marquez could be synonymous with fear. Now, to be fair to the full picture, Morales never used the word hate in any documented interview. What he used was something arguably more telling: the language of a man who still felt disrespected more than 10 years after the fact. Resentment that specific, that detailed, that unprompted, doesn't happen by accident. Whether you call it hatred or wounded pride, one thing is hard to deny: the rivalry never fully left him. But here's the twist nobody saw coming, and it complicates everything you just heard. If this video ended here, you'd walk away thinking Erik Morales spent his whole life as a bitter man, still relitigating a 15-year-old weight clause. That would be incomplete, and honestly, a little dishonest. Because years after that interview, something happened that doesn't fit the bitter rival narrative at all. Pacquiao and Morales sat down together, not as enemies, but as two men who'd each moved into public service. Morales as a congressman in Mexico, Pacquiao as a senator in the Philippines. Morales personally interviewed Pacquiao for Fox Sports, the conversation drifting back to the old rivalry, and Pacquiao said he was genuinely happy to see him again. So which version is real? The man accusing his old rival of hiding behind fear? Or the man smiling for photos with him years later? Here's the answer. And it's the part most documentaries get wrong. Both are real, and they were never actually in conflict. Morales himself has said he takes pride in convincing Pacquiao to move up to 130 pounds in the first place, recalling that Pacquiao didn't even want the fight, and Morales pushed him into it. The same man accusing Pacquiao of avoiding him out of fear is the same man who claims credit for launching him toward greatness. That's not a contradiction. That's what real rivalry actually sounds like once you strip away the highlight reel and let a proud man speak honestly, years later, about a wound that mattered to him. We like our sports stories simple: hero, villain, friend, or enemy. Erik Morales and Manny Pacquiao refuse to fit into either box. Morales' resentment, whatever you call it, came from something universal. Pacquiao took the one thing Morales believed could never be taken: his record of never being stopped, his sense of being the bigger name, his certainty that he was untouchable. And Pacquiao fought him with equal fire, because deep down, he never accepted that first loss as the final word. And he spent the rest of his career proving it wasn't. Their trilogy is still remembered as one of the greatest in boxing history. Not despite that tension, but because of it. The resentment is what made it feel real. The years that followed are what let both men finally set it down. So next time someone tells you boxing rivalries are just business, that fighters shake hands after and move on, remember Erik Morales, sitting across from a reporter more than a decade later, still asking why the man who beat him 3 times couldn't give him 1 more pound. That's not business. That's a wound that took years to close, even after the photos, even after the smiles, even after both men traded gloves for government office. If you want to see exactly where that wound was made, the night Erik Morales' unbeaten knockout record disappeared forever. It's 1 click away.